Hello, I'm Chris Willis,
And I'm Brianne Walker.
and today we're going to be talking to you about developing rookie MOPS team members into all-star performers. So whether you are new and trying to get into marketing operations, or you've been in marketing operations for about 5 years, you've been a team of one, and you're struggling with that, I want to build my team, and I need direction on how to do that. I've just gotten approval. But I only got approval for somebody that has been in marketing operations for like a hot second. How do I do this? If that is you, this is your class. So we're looking forward to sharing some of our insights from our team building together with you today. So a little bit about me. I'm Chris Willis. I'm formerly the Senior Marketing Operations Manager with Trimble Construction, and I have just recently taken on a new role in our digital transformation office, essentially designing our processes for marketing and sales operations, which I'm super excited about. 12-year marketing and sales operations professional. I'm a two-time Marketo champion, and very experienced at being a team of one. So, which I'm sure many of you on this session can relate with. And Brianne?
Hi, I'm Brianne Walker, and I used to work with Chris as his employee in our manager-employee relationship. And so my role actually just switched as well. So instead of helping support various Marketo instances, I now own a Marketo instance in my new role as performance marketing operations manager. I have 2 years of marketing operations experience. Everything I have learned in marketing ops has been in my now 2 different roles here at Trimble. So I'm happy to share all my knowledge that I have gained within these 2 roles and all the experiences that Chris and I have gone through, and hopefully can help better your team development.
It's been a very interesting and great transition from basically from boss employee to now to business partner, working together towards a common goal. It's been really cool. So what are we going to be talking about with you today? So really 3 things. So one, we're going to talk about the problem or the issue that whether you're new or you're a kind of a team of one attempting to build a team, face. We'll talk a little bit about talent scouting, and then eventually we'll talk at the end of the presentation about developing your rookie talent and developing them into all-stars. And it is true that you can grow MOPS organically in this world.
So first off, before we get into all those problem statements, we're going to go over what we are defining as a rookie in MOPS. So it's somebody from 0 to 2 years experience. So it could be somebody who's super green, or it's someone who's still in those beginning stages of their career. So that person may or may not have been working in a marketing automation platform or a customer relationship management platform. They've done different skills or tasks that include campaign management, basic lead flow understanding, and maybe not owning a lead life cycle, but updating a lead life cycle. So those may be some things they have worked on thus far.
So let's talk a little bit about the problem statement. I really like this slide that was presented by the State of Marketing Operations Talent Report that Demandbase and Highway Education put out. And it describes the situation that a lot of us with like 5+ years of marketing operations experience have, is essentially the way the market has worked is that a lot of us that are mid-level, mid-senior level professionals essentially cycle through roles. And we don't really grow in our careers. We just kind of move from MOPS responsibility to MOPS responsibility to MOPS responsibility. And you see this kind of very bloated mid-level tier in a lot of organizations within marketing operations. We don't really have the time or the bandwidth to be strategic as we would like. And being experienced, we have a lot of strategic advice, strategic insights to offer our businesses that would benefit our businesses quite a bit, and as well as benefit our own careers. But we don't really have a pipeline of junior, like new people within marketing ops to take on a lot of the day-to-day tasks that we have to take on. So therefore, like, we spend a lot of time herding cats, making donuts, fighting fires, and getting into this never-ending cycle of I really want to, but I can't, and I'm really stressed out. How many of y'all can relate with me on that? But what we want to get to, you think about the ideal team in a mature organization, is that you have a pipeline of junior people that are taking on, the basic tasks like the campaign bills, getting the emails out, making sure everything is QA'd, taking care of a lot of the basic firefighting work, and growing their experience base, becoming mid-level, taking on more complex challenges, becoming more strategic, becoming more visible in the organization, and growing to be more strategic as a senior marketing operations professional. This is what we want to get to. And the challenge is, how do we build up that layer of junior people, especially with folks that are seeking to grow and make marketing operations a profession, which is one of the things that we talk about a lot here at MopsCon. So here's the result of that succession problem is, number one, we burn out because we never really get outside of the rut of firefighting, cat herding, donut making, etc., which creates limited opportunity for growth because we're never really getting outside of our tactical world. We're never getting the opportunity to be in the visible roles because we're so busy trying to fight these fires, which is why this meme is so popular among MOPS people. Like, we all kind of relate with, hey, it's fine. We put on our smiley face and we show up to work, or we show up to MopsCon, and the world is burning behind us, but we're still showing our happy face. It's fine. But let's be honest. There has to be a better way.
And leading into that succession problem is the problem that people like myself 2 years ago have of how do you get into MOPS? And so we've broken it down into a summary of 3 challenges that we see to break into the industry. I'll go into further detail on future slides, but just overall, there's no degree for MOPS, there's a daunting MarTech stack, and there are lofty job requisitions. So moving to the next slide, when we talk about, there's no degree for MOPS, somebody who's looking at getting into MOPS, may come across in their research this MarTech map by Scott Brinker. Chris affectionately calls it the Braille chart. And, somebody looking at this will say, oh my gosh, look at all this tech that there is in this industry. Like, where do I even start? And in college, I never had an opportunity or exposure to even learn about these tools. I've had no hands-on experience. In schools, you may take marketing classes, but it's not really focused on the technology. So really, there's no way for someone to learn other than on the job. And, it's not just a negative thing looking at this Braille chart. It also is really positive and exciting for us in MOPS because we look at this and say, wow, look at all this technology that we can look at integrating into our stack, which ones, are new that have come out. But for somebody new, it's quite daunting. And then on the next slide, there's all these different ways that the Learning Experience Alliance, they show of how to get into MOPS. There's different career paths and how do you decide what to do. And because there's no linear path, if you ask Chris or myself how we got into MOPS, Chris came from sales ops and I came from demand gen, there's no correct way to do it. And so looking at this, there might be, you're struggling to find what's the right way to do it. And the answer is there's not a right way to do it. You just kind of learn on the job and you go from there.
Yeah, and that's one of the really awesome things about MOPS. Thinking about why this is such an attractive career is if you look at that, that Braille chart and you look at this periodic table, there's a lot of opportunity in there. There's a lot of innovation. And so, with innovation and with all of this opportunity, there's potential for growth. But how do we get there? And as a manager, our first job, especially if we get that job requisition, is, well, how do I find people? How do I find talent that will fit the kind of the criteria that we look for a good marketing operations person? We know what we generally know what we're looking for, but everybody that we know that we're looking for is like basically somebody like us. So it's important to think about recruiting and to like change your mindset about recruiting for MOPs, because the current mindset and all the job requisitions like showcase this, is that we're looking for people with like pre-baked experiences in a tool of our choice, whether that's Marketo, HubSpot, Eloqua, you name it. Like they just expect that you've already got experience in that tool. You've got that prior MOPS track record. You're talking about MQLs and SQLs, and you can have a debate on whether the MQL is dead. Sanford Whiteman and you have drinks, weekly, all the things like these job requisitions are very daunting, and partly because nobody actually fits all of the requirements in any of these job requisitions, which is the secret that's not really a secret in the marketing automation industry. So if we don't come prepackaged with these things, just imagine the rookies don't either. So how do we assess if they're going to be good for the role when we don't have like a tick list of technical pedigree to look at? So we can continue to go down that same path that we've been going down. We can just recycle with our friends and continue to burn out, because like it is, 5 people with 5 years of MOP experience are expensive. And we're probably not going to get approval to hire like the quantity of people that we need. Or we can take a different path and start looking at like building out our talent pipeline with folks that are eager to join MOPs and are motivated to learn and grow the same way we were like 5 to 10 years ago. So I hope you will take this new path with us. What I hope to do is to simplify the scouting report with you. And if you think about it, like you're recruiting a new MOPS team member, you're going to get a lot of advice on what to look for, but ultimately you're going to be looking for 3 basic things. And if you think about it, I'll explain like what we mean by these 3 things in a future slide. But ultimately, kind of the principle is that technical skills can be learned. Like essentially anybody with the initiative, aptitude, and curiosity can learn your marketing automation system, whether it's Marketo, Eloqua, HubSpot, and the operational processes that work within these systems. Ultimately, all of MOPS is a learning process, and what you're looking for are the traits that make somebody both like technically excellent, a great business partner, and a lifelong learner. Which brings me to the first point about initiative. Really initiative is like, learning to take ownership of your career and like looking for opportunities that may not like necessarily be right in front of you. So some examples is like, does that person like seek to leverage resources that they have, like, and within MOPS, there's a lot of resources that we have available, like within our communities, both the vendor communities and the marketing operations communities, as well as like, the product docs of the solutions that we manage, as well as knowledge articles, as well as, professional relationships within our organizations. Do they seek to attend things like podcasts, office hours, webinars, those type of things? And this is one thing I really noticed in Brianne when she joined as a maternity leave backfill. Um, she came to kind of maintain our large nurture program that is speaking to our construction audience. But she didn't really stop there. Like, she wanted to know the why. She wanted to understand the how this fits within the business strategy and develop kind of intelligence around that. And she really impressed me as well as a lot of other people with her initiative and with going the extra mile within that role, which I took like, hey, she'd be a really good MOPS person. The second is technical aptitude. We talked a little bit about this earlier. You want to understand that the person is going to be able to pick up the concepts of marketing technology and how the systems kind of basically run and are set up. So some things you can look for, do they have experience in another marketing automation platform or even an ESP? I know we most of us work with very complex marketing automation platforms, but it is really surprising how some of the ESPs have really grown into being really great workflow engines. So there's a lot of transferable skills in there. So myself, I came from sales ops. I was a former Salesforce admin. CRM skills are going to be very important. And if you think about it, understanding the CRM means that you understand, the lead flow process, you understand the lead to opportunity process, which is essentially the handshake that we in marketing operations are trying to facilitate from our marketing automation systems. Obviously we're looking for digitally native type of behavior, the ability to pick up kind of in systems thinking. And because a lot of us are data nerds, be able to understand data, how it's organized. I found that Excel and knowledge of Google Sheets is also very helpful because you understand data, how data is structured, how it's organized, and how to interpret it. And then of course, we can't really talk about marketing operations without talking about curiosity. We're naturally curious people, whether it's, we're curious about the new features in our marketing automation platform. We're curious about how we can make things better for our stakeholders, or we're curious about where, somebody found that really cool meme. Ultimately it comes down to asking good questions and not necessarily assuming an answer, but digging down and trying to find out the why behind what we do. It's very important. Plus, marketing technology, as you've seen in the Braille chart, marketing technology has evolved quite a bit. So you have to have a level of curiosity in order to keep up with, the tools, the capabilities, and also the thought leadership that's out there. So let's say we've gone through all of those processes. We've found somebody with that, the technical aptitude, the initiative, the curiosity, and we've hired this MOPS rock star. And they come back to us and say, okay, so where's my training plan? And you go, just like this. It's really daunting, and partly because there is no standard training plan in marketing operations. So if you're a rookie that is waiting for somebody to give you the 10-step program for how to be successful in MOPS, you're going to be waiting a very, very long time. And part of the reason for that is that marketing automation training, the canned training that is available, is very focused on how do I push the buttons in the system to get the results that I want. It's very tactically focused on campaign managers, on your basic marketing users. And not that those things aren't important, but the things that we work on in marketing operations are more complex, more ambiguous than your basic 10-step process for getting a campaign through any of our marketing operations system. Plus, there's a lot of company-specific, organizationally specific, strategy-specific things that you have to understand to understand how your lead life cycle works, how like what the why behind your scoring campaigns, and then everybody's CRM integration, whether it's with Salesforce, Dynamics, or even I would dare to say even the HubSpot CRM has very unique intricacies and oddities that you have to address, and it requires that we think outside the box, which makes it a decent challenge for training a new person. It can be very daunting, perhaps even frustrating.
So just as there's not a training guide for rookies, there's maybe not one as well for managers. You've been a team of one for so long, and now you're trying to onboard a new person. So how do you be the right manager for this rookie? So looking at Chris and my working relationship, I distilled into 4 qualities what I thought really led to my success in my career. So the first one was clear and honest communication. We built a lot of trust really quickly, having really open and honest discussions about my interests, what I was struggling on, where I want my career to grow, even saying, hey, Chris, I don't know where I want my career to grow right now. I'm still trying to wrap my head around what this role is as it is, but just having that discussion. Being empathetic. Everyone has been a beginner at some point. And so just remembering when you were first starting out in marketing ops, what you were struggling with, how you didn't know what you didn't know, and just being that listening ear for someone, because communication not only focuses on actually being open and transparent, but actually being a good listener. And what is your rookie telling you? How can you help them and coach them in the right direction? Delegation was a big one for me. Chris really worked in a very strategic way on delegating tasks to me. He started out small and then gradually, as time went on, gave me projects that were more complex. I found that super beneficial because it helped me feel confident in my abilities and I can see, wow, look, I started doing an email program, I did this type of program, and now I'm doing this complex program. And so it's a really great visualization of how I have progressed as a marketing ops professional. And then availability. We all struggle with our calendars sometimes being overrun with meetings. So really trying to find that good balance with your rookie of how can I answer their questions? How can I point them in other directions? But also, not making them feel like they're left high and dry, especially in this remote world that we're working in.
Yeah, and one thing I would add around the delegation, and for everybody that maybe this is your first management role, is that one piece of advice that I got when I was first starting out in my managerial career was from a course that was recommended to take called situational leadership. It was very good at like helping me understand as a manager like how to delegate well, and when to be more prescriptive and when to kind of give more of the reins out. I think we all struggled with that as managers, especially those of us who are experts in our craft. Like delegation is hard, and sometimes it's really hard for us to give up ownership of the doing. So I definitely recommend leaning into that, and that situational leadership class is really helpful for that. So we're at MopsCon, and so of course we're going to talk about the 4 pillars. And ultimately, you have to ask the question: how do I determine what pillar I should be coaching my protege towards? Are they going to be very life cycle scoring, system performance oriented, and lean towards platform operations? Are they going to be like a hardcore data nerd, which I was, and lean towards marketing intelligence operations? Or are they going to come up with the next greatest API methodology that's going to blow every Workato process out of the water, and they're just going to be the next rock star in development marketing operations? Ultimately everybody has to start somewhere, and almost everybody starts in campaign operations. Like this is to use the football analogy, the blocking and tackling of marketing operations. This is where we are day in and day out, getting campaigns produced, built, put into market in a very technically excellent way. And this is also where the more straightforward exercises within marketing operations tend to live, is within campaign operations. It's where you're going to learn your marketing automation platform the best. As you have conversations, as your rookie develops and does their campaign operations work, they're going to tend to gravitate in one of these different directions. And this is where you can have some really great conversations about career growth and like looking at responsibility in some of these other areas, and coaching them in the right direction. And perhaps they may be really bent towards campaign operations. They don't necessarily need to go into any one of these other areas. There's definitely a need for amazing campaign operations people that are designing this kind of one-to-one uber personalized campaign flow. So I don't want to discount campaign operations either in this entire conversation. It's very important. So we're going to talk a little bit about the lessons learned from our experience, because there isn't really a uber defined roadmap, but we did find some things that really worked well for us. And we'll talk about these 4 items in some later slides. But what I want to first talk through is kind of some tried and tested tools that can help you navigate this process. So the first is having regular one-on-ones with your rookie. And what I mean by regular one-on-ones is not you have a one-on-one meeting to do status calls. So one-on-ones are really intended to be meetings where you can gauge the pulse of where you are with your employee, as well as where your employee is with you, and have opportunities to coach, problem solve, and just work through kind of what the working life is like, and help them grow and mature, as well as get feedback from yourself. So this is not a one-way dialogue, it's a two-way dialogue. Also introducing your rookie or your protege to the MOPS communities and encourage involvement in them. At the end of the day, we're all busy, number one. Number two, we don't know everything. And so there's a lot of knowledge out there, and there's a lot of amazing thought leaders in the MOPS community. So Brianne and I are just 2 of them. You're going to be hearing from a lot of amazing people at MOPSCon. So encourage them to get involved and learn from others and learn from this amazing community. And also make sure that you're balancing not only the technical skills that are required for MOPS, which are very important for getting the day-to-day kind of the blocking and tackling, as you will, done, but also focusing on the soft skills. So organizational savvy, developing rapport, all those soft skills that are going to help them grow in their career and gain more influence. Definitely balance those 2, because they're all important. And then focus on being a coach rather than just a boss that's just giving orders. Because nobody wants to work for an autocrat. We love working on teams. We love having shared missions. So give your teams a sense of that, and a sense of that in reality, not just in optics. So the first tool that I used and really helped us as we grew our team was the stakeholder tour. So as we know in marketing operations, and that may be a little bit misleading nowadays, because if you think about it, we're doing a lot more than just marketing related things. We have a lot of stakeholders that we take care of, from for our CRM teams to our sales and sales development teams, to all of our marketing stakeholders, as well as our IT and our finance groups. And it's important for people in marketing operations to understand who the stakeholders in these roles are, what responsibilities these roles cover, and how can we be good business partners to them. So the semi-cruel thing that I did in my training plan with Brianne is I gave her a list of all of these people that I wanted her to meet and included their roles, and told her to schedule meetings with them, introduce herself to them, and essentially get to know their needs, get to know what keeps them up at night, and get to know like how she can support them. And of course, I sent a warm email ahead of time, just introducing, hey, this is Brianne, she's the new person. But essentially from there, like the responsibility was on her. I'm curious on how you felt during that kind of experience, Brianne.
It was a little nerve-wracking, especially being the new person, to say, all right, I'm going to just blindly set up a meeting on this person's calendar and, ask for their time. And I don't really know why I'm asking for their time other than that Chris said that this person is important. So, having to fill in all those blanks during those calls was a little nerve-wracking. And I felt like maybe the first couple were a little shaky, but once I got into the rhythm of it, it moved a lot smoother.
Yeah, and there's somewhat of a discovery process that goes on when we're learning MOPS, when we're and really marketing operations is kind of a never-ending discovery and learning process. So the next thing we're going to talk about is something that I would call the documentation scavenger hunt. I can't take full credit for this. So when Brianne joined my team, I didn't really know particularly how to approach this process of training up a new person. So I was a newbie in the Marketo Champion program at the time, and I talked to my champ mentor, Christina Zinga, about how do I kind of approach training a new person? And the number one thing she said was have her document all of your processes. And my immediate reaction was yes. Because I was a very, 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 very add another 10 very busy marketing operations person, which we all know what that means, that we don't really have time for documentation. So selfishly, I took this as an opportunity to leverage as an opportunity to get some really good documentation of our processes, as well as I saw what Christina was telling me is that getting in and having to think through how things are built within Marketo, which is our marketing automation platform, and document, both the hows and the whys, created some really great dialogues for Brianne and I, because she would inevitably come with questions of why did you do this? And it would create dialogues. And in some cases, because some of these processes were developed 9 months ago, sometimes I forgot that some of these processes were there, and she got the chance to kind of see, how Chris thinks through things, either right or wrong. So I'm curious, Brianne, how did you kind of approach the documentation scavenger hunt? Because I knew that was a pretty daunting list of documentation that I asked for.
Initially, it was very much of, I don't know why I'm writing this down. I'm literally saying this is happening and then this, but I don't really understand what's going on. So it definitely created lots of questions for me. But, to this day, this is now something I do as part of my process. Anytime I'm doing any kind of campaign work, even government's documentation, I just know that we can't have all of these processes in our brains, because I would always say, well, that's in Chris's big brain and I don't know where that is. So if I document it, then I actually know where it lives, and somebody else I can pass that information on to as well.
Yep. And as a result, you actually in this process train on following good practices rather than taking on some of our bad habits. Next is what I would call ask versus tell. So during one-on-ones or going through documentation reviews, there's inevitably going to be points where the rookie is going to ask you well, how do I do X, Y, Z? How do I construct that smart campaign? Should I use an any or an all? Or how should I think about structuring this smart list? And so as an expert, like, because all of us got promoted into these roles because we're experts in our field, our natural indication is just to just give the answer. Um, but inevitably, that doesn't really help us because we're not transferring knowledge. We're just kind of telling them how to do things and giving them kind of a three-step process. And it's also not helping them because they're just getting the answer and just kind of going to the next thing. So one thing that I did was when Brianne brought a question to me and she would ask, well, how would you do this? I would actually turn it around and ask her, well, Brianne, how would you approach this solution? How would you construct this smart list? Which I'm sure was not fun at the time.
It definitely was not. I just wanted to get an answer and move on to the next phase of the process. And no one likes feeling stuck.
Mm-hmm. But what was good about it is like it builds like muscle memory in the brain where you start to develop those great marketing operations thought processes, and inevitably like the dialogue changes from like her asking me, well, how would you do this, to now I'm asking Brianne. It's like, hey, how would you, how are you approaching this? Like, give me your thought process. I want your advice on this. And so building that muscle memory allows you to kind of move from like, coach mentor, or from coach and like player to like business partner, where you're bouncing ideas off of each other. And so like, as we close this presentation, I want to talk about like creating a roadmap for success. So obviously, like, we've all like had 30, 60, 90s in our jobs when we've come on board on companies. I've taken the approach to develop a 30, 90, and 180 day plan when putting together my plan with Brianne, and primarily because we know it takes about 6 months for somebody to be really amazingly proficient in marketing operations as well as the marketing automation tool. And I wanted to allow enough time for that and set reasonable expectations rather than expectations that really could not get met. So in the first 30 days was essentially the basics, like meeting all the stakeholders, understanding their needs, as well as doing some basic technical onboarding. So learning, how Marketo worked, learning about the operational kind of programs within Marketo, and really kind of like introducing her to more of the marketing operations best practices that make her very successful what she does today. And then kind of, as I mentioned, in that situational leadership, as you move into like the 90-day period and the 180-day period, you're giving more delegation, more advanced responsibility, more kind of really hard challenges, to stretch their experience and to also to build confidence. So, the documentation scavenger hunt was within the first 90 days, and primarily because there's a lot of stuff to document, as well as assuming some of the administrative and the campaign operations tasks. And then within that 180-day period, because I saw Brianne as a leader, I saw her in that role before she even came on my team. I wanted her to assume that role as a subject matter expert in marketing operations. And I think in that 180-day period, you presented to our marketing automation user group about that complex nurture campaign that you were maintaining and had helped expand. So Brianne, what would you add to this? What was your experience going through this process?
Definitely doing a lot of learning outside of the office was something I took advantage of, and seeking outside help. I'm a big advocate for mentors just in your career, having a career mentor, having a technical mentor. I was lucky enough with Chris that I not only had a technical expert, I had a coach, and he satisfied two things in one. So I really didn't need outside mentoring. But just being scrappy as a marketing ops professional is, I think, a really good adjective for anyone. So, you know, working with your manager on creating this roadmap, and then also thinking about other things that you want to achieve, and thinking past the 180-day mark. Where would you like to be in a year? Success is ever changing. Your vision for what you want your career to look like will change. So, just keep forward thinking and thinking of ways to get to your next step. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation. It's time for Q&A, and we'll see you there.
Right. See ya.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. We're live.
We're so happy you're here, and thank you for listening to us. I think we can go through the questions, Chris, and I can read one that I've seen pop up first. So, Amy had a question directed at you. Can you explain more what you mean by digitally native behavior and how you screen for that?
Definitely. I was a little nervous when you threw that question at me, Amy, because I don't think there is a right or wrong answer. This is somewhat of a soft skill. I think what I was referring to when I mentioned digitally native behavior was like when you notice their working style and just, the way that they carry themselves. Are they leveraging technology features to its full advantage? Are they curious about, and that kind of goes back into like curiosity in a way. Are they curious about technology and its usage and finding like new innovative ways to do things? So I think early on in my career, that was noticed in me with how I used Excel. Like my MBA program, which I think is mostly a master's degree in Excel manipulation, I developed a lot of really good spreadsheet skills. That's definitely helped me. And so I don't necessarily have the digitally native life of folks in kind of generations after me, but noticing kind of innovation, curious approaches, leveraging technology to its full advantage. It's probably not something that you can test for, but it's something you can notice when you work with folks.
Yeah, and just knowing, I think I asked Chris early on, okay, this lead came into Marketo, so now it's happening, where is it going next? And just wanting to dig deeper into, okay, it's not just in our system, what's happening? What's the next step? Okay, now it's Marketo's cookies are on the website, so what's going on? And just being aware of the whole landscape of that customer journey in a tech environment. And right. The next question, Chris, I think we both can answer this question.
I think we can both answer this question.
Where does ownership of creating and, more importantly, maintaining documentation sit in your MOPS orgs? I think many of us are guilty of the very, very, very busy lifestyle. So what's the best way to ensure you have
with about 20 extra busies
comprehensive updated docs as opposed to lots of partial? I can speak of our current team and basically, I guess, who's doing the process starts the documentation. We've always talked about wanting to share that with somebody else who doesn't know anything of what's going on. So we have an API expert on our team. If he gave it to me, which I am not an API expert, how would I read that? What's thorough? What is missing? Is it too high level? But right now, the process owners and the governance owners are maintaining and owning those documents. Sometimes it has to be a gentle reminder of, hey, can you document this process? And other times it just comes naturally. But I think it's just making it a part of your routine of you did this, process and workflow. So now there needs to be a documentation for the next person to know.
Right. Well, in kind of the way our organization has evolved, and I somewhat consider myself an extended member of the MOPS team, even though I don't report into MOPS. I report into our digital transformation office now. Is we've actually developed a standardized process for developing documentation around all of our processes now, which has been really amazing. It's also forced me to like focus more on documentation because I'm not necessarily in the doing, which has helped me kind of grow quite a bit. Because even 6 months ago when Brianne and I were working together, we were, I was a working manager. Like I was, still doing things and coaching. So, and of course, all of us know that we're very, very times 50 busy. And if you're not developing, I would encourage you, like, if you're not developing documentation as you're doing things, it's probably not going to get done. So definitely look at doing your documentation in real time rather than waiting till after the project's done, because there'll be another project and it will just snowball on you.
Yep. So we have another question that came in. What would you have had to do differently if it had been multiple MOPS rookies, or is it even realistic? I'll let you start with that, Chris.
I don't know if I would have done anything differently if it was multiple MOPS rookies. I still would have encouraged one-on-one because I think you learn a lot in a one-on-one conversation that you don't necessarily learn when you're in a group conversation. The only thing I may have done differently is with the documentation scavenger hunt is to like assign different pieces of the documentation to different rookies and have them like collaborate, which would have been even more evil than the just assigning it all, because then you assign it as a group project and then you force the teamwork function in there. And of course, we all have to be team players, especially in our cross-functional roles.
Yeah, like I think we still would suggest that starting with the campaign operations path and then really pivoting if a different rookie, because I gravitated toward the platform operations, but if we had somebody who went to the MyOps route, like Chris would definitely have to pivot on what he would ask that person to do. So it really just is dependent, I guess, on the rookie rather than really shifting our strategy so much. Like that will just come naturally at that point.
Right. Well, and somewhat you're learning on the job. So like what your training plan will look like, there's the old saying by Mike Tyson is like everybody has a plan until somebody gets punched in the face. So ultimately you're going to work in to the business priorities, and the business priorities are going to somewhat dictate like what that training plan is to some degree. And of course we're all learning on the job to some degree. I don't think I'd have it any other way. And I'll definitely second Amy's shameless plug. That's going to be a really great session. So I definitely encourage everybody to attend that. You have like 4 rock stars going to be sharing their knowledge with y'all.
And from rookie to any other rookies who are listening, definitely get involved in the communities. I know that's something Chris mentioned, but I think that's just really great. I'm part of the MoPros, and that's just fantastic. Like I kick myself of like, why didn't I join this earlier? And, just attending these conferences, like my first MopsCon was last year, and, it's something that's just marked on my calendar now every year. So really just being an active participant, because there's so much learning to be done. So, great job if you're here already. And if you know a person who's interested in MOPS, definitely share the session or any other sessions you would find relevant.
Yeah. And as you can see, especially from that slide shared at the beginning, there's a lot of opportunity. I think a lot of us have a lot of like some selling to do to try to get more rookies now that we've got all this knowledge. And then we got one more question. I think we got a minute. How do you offer feedback coach to a rookie who may not be meeting initial expectations while you're showing that you're invested in their success? So I'll try to take that because I did one is just that continuous feedback. Going back to the situational leadership, if they're not taking on additional responsibility, you may have to adjust your game plan a little bit and focus on more of the basics and determining like where are they necessarily missing in their skill set, and really kind of hone in and focus on those things. A lot, understanding thought process, is this person looking just for answers, and they get frustrated when you ask them why?
Yeah, it's like that 5 whys. You
Right.
just keep asking why until you get to the root.
Right. And you may have to, you're always going to have to adjust your game plan. There's no 5-step blueprint for success for, coaching really anybody, but especially for a MOPS person. And every human being is different. So it's just learning your team, and learning to be a good one-on-one mentor to them. So I hope that helped.
That situational leadership class you were talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're off to our next session. Thank you so much for attending our presentation. I hope this was helpful to you. And look for us on LinkedIn. We'd love to connect with you. And we'll see you on the fireside chat with Sarah Kennedy Ellis in a few minutes.
Yeah, don't miss that one. Thanks again.
Bye.